Listen, if I'm back here next year, the only reason it's going to be is because of the work you've done in carrying petitions, of getting people out to vote, of doing all of the work that's necessary to get us elected. And when I say us, I mean everybody who's on the ballot that you'll have an opportunity to vote for in Washington County. But I think it's very important that you understand that I, and I think all of the other candidates, fully appreciate the amount of work that you do on a day-to-day basis, whether it's election year or not. And I want to start out by saying thank you. And you can give yourselves a round of applause. We are going to have a tough fight this year. You all know what the registration numbers look like. But we believe that the message that we're delivering in the communities as we go around resonates with people. And it means that we are looking out for one another, whether that's at the local level, or whether that's at the state level, or it's at the national level. That really is the key to being a Democrat. And I want to talk about two stories that'll let you know a little bit about me. When my mother was 1.5 years old, her father died. And the Democratic Party in Brooklyn took care of my mother and grandmother until my grandmother was able to go back to work. So that's a story that's part of family law, but is also very instructive about how Democrats look out for one another and look out for their brothers and sisters in their communities. One of the themes that I've run on consistently has been on jobs. And my kids will joke and say that I've been talking to them about jobs since they were about 2 or 3 years old. And there's a story associated with that. When my great-grandfather was probably a middle-aged man, he had 3 sons. They all lived in Brooklyn. This was during the Depression. And every morning he would get up and he would walk to the jobs in Brooklyn to find work for his 3 boys. Then he would walk to their homes and he would walk them back to the job. Now the piece that I always wondered about was the walking them back to the job. And the reason I wondered about that was he afraid they wouldn't go? Every time I mentioned that to my father or grandfather, they did not see the humor in that commentary. I thought it was fairly clever, but they obviously didn't think so. So, you know, as we go forward, there's a couple of themes. But really the themes are we looking out for one another? Are we working hard to get Democrats elected? And are we doing the right thing? And as I go through this relatively new role for me in Congress, as I decide how I'm going to vote on a piece of legislation, the first thing I look at is, how is it going to affect you and me? What's the impact on it? The second thing I look at is, how are we going to pay for it? And the third I look at is, what's the impact nationally? But the first and foremost job of a member of the House of Representatives is to represent the people in his or her district. And I will tell you that the person who repeats that theme the most and understands it the best is the minority leader in Congress, Nancy Pelosi. She understands that. And she demands it of each of us. So I think that this is really a theme that starts locally and goes national. As we fight this fight over the next roughly 4 months, there will be a tremendous amount of negative advertising. We have not seen it start very heavily yet here, but it will. You know, one of the most important things you can do is when you see something and one of your neighbors is saying, "I can't believe that about," fill in the blank, you need to check out whether or not it's accurate and be able to respond and say, you know, that's not really the truth. That really isn't an accurate statement. We've got a couple of pieces of good news this week. Siena did a poll that said 53% of New Yorkers are in favor of implementation of the Affordable Care Act. 53%. That's the first time we've seen that since March of 2010. That is very important because it's going to take one of the big sticks away from our friends on the other side of the aisle. one of the big sticks. You know, we spent $50 million in Congress trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act. I voted, I believe, either 31 or 33 times, it's a little hard to tell, to uphold the act. And it's extraordinarily important that we do that for a couple of reasons. One, we need to make sure that we're covering people. That's very important. Number two, this is the only way we're going to improve healthcare outcomes and reduce costs associated with healthcare. That's what we have to do. I will also tell you that I'm fully committed to making sure that we make no adverse changes to Social Security, no adverse changes to Medicare. There are many, many ways we can improve Medicare without impacting benefits to individuals. Many, many ways. We really need to focus on that and make sure that we are moving in that direction. I was just down at the Saratoga County Fair with Paul Tonka, and that fair is almost exclusively devoted to the ag community. They have really held, if you will, the purpose of what a county fair is. Ag, in my old district and in my new district, is the largest GDP. The largest GDP. I'm a member of the House Ag Committee. We passed a bill out of the committee last week. We are unsure whether or not the Republicans will bring it to the floor for a vote. It's extremely important that that happen. The Ag bill expires on September 30th. We don't want to give the Republicans the opportunity to put that into another continuing resolution and simply extend it as it is. There are too many important things that the ag community needs in order to move forward and to stabilize itself. And you have many, many dairy farms in your communities, and you know the impact that they have. So I think it's very important, and this is a little piece of activism for you. You can write to my Republican colleagues and ask them to push their leadership to bring that bill to the floor. That is incredibly important. It's something that we need to act on as a Congress. And as Mr. DiNapoli said before, sometimes we don't do a great job of getting things done in Washington. And unfortunately, that's true. But I want to tell you that that's changing one member of Congress at a time. One member of Congress at a time. And it's extremely important that we have a positive attitude and that we convey a positive attitude to our friends on the other side of the aisle. Because that's what they're conveying to you is a negative attitude. Everything is in the negative. We're not talking about how to solve the problems. We're talking about what they don't like about what either the president is doing or Democrats are doing, but they are not offering us solutions. We need to be the group that's saying, here's how we're going to create jobs, here's how we're going to improve health care, here's how we're going to improve the lives of our children, here's how we're going to improve how government delivers services. These are all things that are doable and that we should be doing. I want to conclude by asking everybody who's running for office, even if it is every other person, to raise their hand, if they would. Just raise your hand with me. Now, why did I ask you to do that? One, I want you to know who they are. But number two, it's very important that on election day, you bring yourself and 100 other people to the polls to vote for each one of those people who raise their hands. Again, thank you very much for everything you do, and understand that I understand, and I think all my colleagues do, that we'll be back here next summer based upon your hard work. Thank you and have a great day.